All right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Monday, July 10th. Fuck it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat. And Clayton, I am still in France on the European vacation. I am now in the south of France. I'm in the countryside, relaxing, taking afternoon siestas. And, before we get into talking about this weekend, which, I mean, this is a gigantic weekend that's going to have effect on the box office for years to come. I think we have to talk about an international incident that I had in Paris the other day. So we had a wannabe Parisian spotted me on the streets of Paris. I was with my wife. We were about to do a little walking tour, and a man on a bicycle came up to me and
Of
said,
course, on a bike.
uh, "Well, why would to stay?" And it's great. He was getting exercise. He was moving about town, doing his business.
Okay.
Wasn't in a
I
car. Would you prefer he was in a pickup truck?
it wasn't well, of course, but that's not the stain. I just made it was just an observation.
Okay. So he was on a bicycle. He was not on a pickup truck hauling dirt, and came over, said, "Are you Pat Stango?" I said, "Yes." And he then told me he is a wannabe boy, lives in Paris, loves the show, went for the handshake. I gave him the handshake, and then he went about his business. So this was the ideal interaction for all of our listeners who are out there. When you spot myself, or if you spot Clayton, who I think he's got a less public persona than I do. He's a tougher spot. Would you
Yeah.
say you're a tougher spot at this point in life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I got the sunglasses, the hat. I'm covered in
Right.
soot.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be covered in soot.
If you see a soot man, like a pig pen esque figure walking through the streets, then that could be Clayton.
But
But definitely
don't risk it.
don't risk it. So yeah, don't go up to Clayton. But if you see me, do it the way this wannabe Parisian did the other day, which was quick interaction, state your fandom, and
Mhm.
then moved along. Let me go about my day. There wasn't an ask for autographs. He didn't have like a poster, a Bo Boys poster that he wanted me to sign so he could sell it on eBay. Didn't want to do selfies. Didn't bust out
Yeah.
a selfie stick.
Yeah.
Just said, "I'm a fan." Shook my hand like a wannabe old man, and got back on his bicycle, and did whatever he does in life. So
Yeah.
that's the ideal interaction. So thank you to that wannabe Parisian for setting the template for what all wannabe boys, wannabe girls, wannabe people
People.
should do when they see me or the soot man Clayton in public.
Mhm. Nice.
So I think now with that, listen, the show is bigger than ever. We're
Yeah.
getting recognized all over the world. So if you haven't already, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube. Let's spread this thing. It's going around the world. Let's get into outer space. Let's really make this BO Boys thing happen. So Clayton, with
Well,
that said,
Pat,
I think it's
before
time to
that's a
plow.
big one. That's a big one
Okay.
is the reviews. Stop
Mm-hmm.
this episode right now
Mm-hmm.
and just go to Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars, shoot us a quick review. It doesn't have to be anything involved, huh?
Huh.
Just right. Love the show. Blah
Yeah.
blah blah. 5 stars. You can even put love the show, blah blah blah. 5
Yep.
stars. Then get
Yep.
back
Use
to
that.
listening.
Mm-hmm.
Get back to listening because that's huge for us. We got the Minahan bump, and we need to spread this because people need to know the information about the box office, the real information about the box office,
Yes,
and
yes,
we're about to give it to you.
yes. This isn't about us wanting to make the show bigger so that we could profit, huh? So
Huh?
that we could live on an island, huh?
Huh?
It's about getting vital box office analysis out further and further into the public. So,
Yep.
help us do that. Anyway, Clayton, I think it's time for you to give a plow for the weekend of Friday, July 7th. Yes, Friday, July
Yes.
7th.
And hate to say I told you so. but we
Mhm.
told you so. Number one, Insidious, The Red Door, $32.6 million in its debut weekend. Number two, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny made $26.5 million, down 56%. It's at $121.2 million in its second weekend. Number three, Sound of Freedom made $18.2 million. Its total gross as of Sunday, well, as of Monday, is $40.2 million. Number four, Elemental made $9.6 million, down 21%. It's at $109.1 million in its fourth weekend. And Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse made $8 million, down 33%. It lost 382 theaters. It's at $357.6 million in its sixth weekend. And that is beating Guardians 3 for the biggest of the summer at the moment.
Mhm.
And let's do number 6 and 7 here. Number 6, Joyride, a newbie, tanked at $5.8 million in its first weekend. And number 7, No Hard Feelings, made $5.2 million, down only 33%. It lost 522 theaters. It's at 40.4 in its third weekend. That is your top 7.
Wow. So, I mean, listen, there's the big stories, Insidious and Sound of Freedom. Those are the big ones, but let's start at the bottom first with these summertime raunchy comedies. So, No
Oofa,
Hard
oofa.
Feelings in its third weekend basically made the same amount that Joyride made its opening weekend. And
Mhm.
before the summer, there was talk, this was sort of like a mini Barbenheimer, Joyride and No Hard Feelings. Would they be battling it out for the raunchy comedy of the summer? Obviously, Strays is going to crush them both at the end of the summer, but
Yeah.
this was no competition. I mean,
No.
Joyride opening weekend, it immediately petered out, ran out of gas. And what happened here, Clayton? Because this 5 million is way lower than I thought. I thought this could break out. I was predicting 12 or 13, but even you were going like around 8 in the opening weekend. And for this to basically pull a machine, that this basically did maybe even less than what the Burt Kreischer The Machine sort of joke movie made a few months ago, and made what the Sebastian Maniscalco All About My Father movie made a few months ago. So
Dude,
what happened with Joyride?
this made nearly as much as Joe Coy's Easter Sunday made,
Wow. Wow.
right?
A year
That's
ago.
the comp here.
Yeah.
That
Not even on
movie,
Easter.
yeah, that is really rough for this movie because it was promoted. I don't know how well it was promoted, honestly, because
Mhm.
people did not turn out to this, but I was being hopeful that this would open, quote unquote, "low," and then
Mhm.
maybe have, like, a good hold because people are choosing it after they choose Insidious, but I don't know, this movie looks pretty DOA. I'm trying to see what the demos for this are.
Yeah, this could be a movie where the tally is so low that they haven't even bothered to collect demos, because I'm not seeing any demos in Anthony Diaz for Disney D'Alessandro's right through. He's definitely not Anthony Diaz for demos, because he should have demos for every new movie, but he
Yeah,
only has
yeah.
them for Insidious. But something it looks like correctly pointed out in our weekend preview was you didn't think there would be enough young audience to go around to satisfy both a new horror film in Insidious and a new raunchy comedy in Joyride. And the youngsters were going to make their choice and they were going to go horror. And that does seem to be part of what happened here is the youngsters did not did not choose comedy this weekend. They chose horror.
Mhm. Well, because young women are the people not I mean, it's young people in general, but young women do go see horror in large numbers, and that's what
Mhm.
Joyride was aimed for. So it turns out 58% of people who went to see Joyride were women, 61 between 18 and 34, which is very good.
Mhm.
But we don't have any sort of uh, demo,
Ethnic
race.
breakdowns.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think people went and saw this Red Door. And I
Yeah.
think we can say that, listen, 40 is not 100, 40 is not 120, but $40 million for a comedy right now, I mean, this just shows the strength of Jennifer Lawrence here. I think
Mhm.
that's the driving factor with this is that, listen, I'm sure the actors in Joyride are lovely people, but they are not stars. They are not household names, right?
Right. Right.
Jennifer Lawrence is a household name,
Right.
and this isn't a grand success as a movie, but it just continues to show that she's got it. She's got
Yeah.
something, and she brings butts to the seats.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's not gonna have the "There's Something About Mary" run, and you
No.
can't hold that as the bar because that's an historic run. But, that second weekend of No Hard Feelings where it dropped a full 50% showed it was not gonna have probably even a game night run. I think game night is the run that we could look to for recent box office history, where that
Mhm.
opened similarly 17,000,000. I think it got to 70 domestic or so. But No Hard Feelings has had 40 after 3 weeks. It, I think, is going to get to 50. I mean, the big problem I think No Hard Feelings is going to face is it lost 522 theaters last weekend. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is opening this weekend. It's going to lose
Mhm.
more theaters. Week from now, Barbie opens. And I think that takes a ton of No Hard Feelings
Uh,
theaters. So
a month
the
from now, you mean, right?
no, Barbie's in 2 weeks. Barbie's
Barbie's
Mission Impossible opens later this week, and then Barbie's the following week. Where it's here.
okay.
So what I'm saying is in the next few weeks, No Hard Feelings is just gonna lose a lot of theaters. And it doesn't have the holds that are so magnificent that it's gonna force the theater's hands. I think that's gonna be an issue for No Hard Feelings is how is it going to have a long-term run if it's losing 500 theaters already in its third week and probably next week loses 500 to 1,000 more.
Well, so game night was at 45 in its 3rd weekend. Now, of course, this was in
Okay.
February and March. This wasn't in a
Right.
loaded summer season, like you
Right.
said, but it opened at 17. So it opened a little bit higher. It legged out to 69. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but here's the thing. We can't underestimate that beach scene. We can't underestimate Jennifer
Yep.
Lawrence.
Yep.
So I don't wanna sit here and say that this isn't possible, that like a $60 million cume isn't possible. It is possible.
It's possible. It's possible. I think 50 to me is gonna happen.
Mhm.
I would, not stake my reputation. My reputation is too great to stake on any single thing. But I would predict it's probably gonna go over 50. And I think that's a solid, you know, we're not sports analysis, huh? But that's a
Huh.
single.
Mhm.
That's I would say a single. You round first base, you think about second, but you probably don't end up at second base if it hits 50 million. And 60 million would be a clear, that's a hit, that's a success, that's a job well done. Back to Joyride, I think this is, like you said, this is DOA. This
Mhm.
isn't going to break. It maybe was promoted as too gross, possibly. I don't know if right now comedy also has to find itself in terms of the level of raunch that audiences want. And I've seen stills for this movie and posters for this movie where there is vomit, where there is or it seems like retching. I feel like I've seen freeze frames where there is retching.
I think you're searching
by the
for these
characters.
frames. I think this is a search for
I
them.
put Joyride Wretch,
Okay, well, there you go.
and I that's what I get.
You get
But
what you
well,
ask for.
this is something that you brought up yourself personally when you saw trailers for this movie. Is you felt like it was too raunchy, and now that we've had this opening weekend of 5 million, do you think that the marketing leaned too much on the
Yes.
raunch? Because No Hard Feelings did not lean very hard on super hard on the raunch. It had some double entendres, obviously the no hard feelings hints at hardness for I won't say what it is, but people know what the hardness could be. It hints at that stuff, but it doesn't lean on the raunch. I think Joyride's marketing leaned on the raunch, and I thought that would be a positive, but maybe, modern day summer 2023 audiences didn't want a raunch fest.
Well, I didn't see this movie. I have no plans of seeing it now because it's a total box office turd, but the thing that I'm hearing is that
Mhm.
it actually swerves into weird territory at the end where it's not raunchy. So it's like it has a tonal issue.
Okay.
And so I do think maybe they led with the raunch and misrepresented this film. I
Okay.
felt like they put all their money, all their chips on gross out, right?
Mhm.
And it didn't pay off. Like for me, I mean, listen, this is coming from a gentleman who in the last 3 months has watched Tomcats, okay?
Okay.
And kids, if you don't know what
Co-starring
Tomcats
Bill
is,
Maher.
yeah. If you don't know what Tomcats is, just Google that or, watch the trailer. You don't have to watch the whole thing like I did. This is a man here that is not opposed to raunch,
Mhm. Mhm.
but there was something about that trailer that had no nuance to it. It kept hitting the button, the button, the button, the button to the point where I tuned out and I said,
Mm.
"This feels like a gross movie I don't wanna see."
And then you
And
watch
if
Tomcats with Jerry
then I
O'Connell,
watched Tomcats again. But if as and starring Gary Busey's son, what
the
was his
late
first
Jake
name?
Busey.
No, he's not late, but, I mean, maybe late for a business meeting, maybe late for AA, but he's not, past. But that
Was he
I
Shasta McNasty?
he was
Okay, so
he's Shasta McNasty.
you're watching movies co-starring Shasta McNasty and not getting
Mhm.
grossed out, but the trailer for Joyride you felt was too much.
In Tomcats, his testicle gets eaten
Mm.
after
Mhm.
surgery.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. So, listen, I don't blanch at much, but there was something about this Joyride trailer that turned me off. And so if
Okay.
it turned me off, then it might have turned more people off. But let's not focus on the negative here because really I think the reason, and you mentioned it earlier and I mentioned it last time, the reason this movie one of the big reasons this movie tanked is because everybody wanted to see behind the red door.
Yes. Yes.
Insidious 5?
5, Insidious 5. Because
Th
remember, Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, they're in 1, they're in 2, take a little breaksy for 3 and 4, and now they're back for 5, and they were back with a vengeance. This
yes,
this is huge for Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne.
and I've seen in some of the previews, I was watching a YouTube video as I do,
Mhm.
and, checking out the competition because we are YouTubers.
Huh.
Huh? And there was a commercial that I actually watched the whole way through that catches you up on what's going on in the Insidious world, and I was like,
Wow.
"That's brilliant," 'cause
That's helpful.
I'd never seen an Insidious movie, but you
Mhm.
know what? If I wanted to see this one and listen, it's a huge hit, I can, 'cause guess what? I'm caught up.
Yes, yes, yes. I do think this is a movie for you to see in the States because you went through all the effort of watching the catch up commercial, so you know what happened in the plot, and way overperformed. We
Mhm.
were high on this movie, and both of us were high 20s. I think I said 29 on the preview episode. You were 27, 28. This movie opened at what, 32? So
32.
I think this has earned a viewing from at least one of the BO boys. And right
Right.
now I'm in the French countryside. There's a small cinema here. It's not showing Insidious the Red Door this week. But I mean, I think back in the States, I think you get in the dirt truck and you really should check out this Red Door because it's a
Well
phenomenon.
so I did say, I think I said 28 or
Hmm.
29 as well, and I said if this thing went over 30, I wouldn't be surprised
Right. And we're not.
because horror is a force,
Hmm.
and it doesn't matter what time of year.
Hmm.
We've had summer horror hits. I mean, look at The Black Phone last
Hmm.
summer, Candyman, that was the
Hmm.
summer before. I mean, a movie opening to $30 million. And listen, a Blumhouse movie, let's quickly, because we're gonna get into the brass tacks here with this movie and why this movie did as well as it did. But can we just talk a little bit about Blumhouse? Because everybody talks Pixar, everybody
Mm.
talks Marvel as, "Oh, they were strong for so long, and we know both of those brands are waning." But I'll tell you a brand that's not waning, and I'll tell you a brand that does a great job of separating the wheat from the chaff, right?
Mm. Mhm.
Blumhouse. People go see Blumhouse movies by name, even though Blumhouse sometimes puts out stinkers that go straight to VOD, straight to PVOD, right?
Yep.
They know how to separate. Five Nights at Freddy's. That's a movie
Mhm.
that's going to theaters and Peacock. And you know why? They know it's a stinker.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
they have enough respect to say, some people want to see this movie on a big screen because it was a huge video game. It was an IP that people were saying, "Oh, this would make a great movie. This would make a great movie." They had the Nicolas Cage knockoff movie that came out first. And
Willy's Wonderland.
yeah, and now Five Nights at Freddy's, they know it's a stinker, but they're giving people a chance to see it on the big screen and also see it at home. But that's not gonna make me think Blumhouse does stinkers, because we know they
Mhm.
don't. We know they
Right.
hit it out of the park, and this has been happening since The Purge, since Sinister. Like, this is this is gonna be an unprecedented run, and it shows no signs of stopping.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, Blumhouse has that brand loyalty, and they know when to put their chips into the middle of the table. They
Mhm.
knew this Insidious Red Door. They had a potential huge hit on their hands, and they went crazy with the promotion. We'll talk about it. They're doing live street stunts. They're getting their social media really revved up, commercials all over the place. Like they knew this was the one. And then they know here's the thing that we put on Amazon Prime.
Mhm.
Blumhouse just knows which ones to back. And they know the audience. They know this young audience. In the last year, they've had hits with Black Phone last summer. They had Megan. They've
Megan.
got this Insidious Red Door. They are just a reliable brand that knows how to reach that young audience. We talk about, is big screen comedy dead? And maybe it is, or maybe it's never going to be what it was back in the day of, Jim Carrey, Mike Myers, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, Melissa McCarthy movies, Seth Rogen movies. But in a way, Blumhouse is serving the audience that used to go to those. And Insidious is not a comedy, but
Mhm.
Insidious is just a movie that young people got excited about the same way they
Mhm.
got excited about Megan, which was a comedy. I mean, Blumhouse, something I've heard, I'll throw at you. I've heard people on in different arenas talking about, why can't Blumhouse do with comedy what it does with horror, which is keep the budgets low, you know, make a bunch of bets on different movies, find the ones that they know this is going to be the hit and put all your chips in on it and make some low budget comedy hits. I mean, do you think that is a thing Blumhouse should get into, or it should just
No.
keep stay with what works?
So there was a time where Happy Madison, which is, of course, Adam Sandler's production company,
Mhm.
did a little offshoot called Scary Madison, where they
Okay.
did a horror movie. And the
Okay.
reason why
Was that
nobody's
Grandma's
heard.
Boy?
No, that wasn't a horror movie.
Okay. I thought it
Um,
was. I've seen it and I thought it was.
so they tried to do Scary Madison. And the reason why you've never heard of Scary Madison is because it was an absolute total failure.
Hmm.
Blumhouse's milieu, if you will, is horror. There's no reason for them to branch off into comedy because it's not profitable and it would
Mhm.
just dilute their brand.
Right.
And because the
Right.
thing with comedy is that it's so hard to nail that on the head. Where horror, listen, horror is hard. I'm not saying making a horror movie is easy, but the brain trust there at Blumhouse know what they're doing and why change horse in midstream. Not that they completely, put all their efforts behind comedy. I don't think comedy is a surefire thing right now. And
Mhm.
so I wouldn't waste my time with it, to be honest with you. And that comes from a big screen comedy fan. I wouldn't
Mhm.
waste my
Mhm.
time with it.
Right.
There's
Right.
no pitch that you could give me at Blumhouse that wouldn't have a gigantic star in it that's willing to work for scale
Right.
that I would get behind.
Right. So, focusing in on Insidious: The Red Door, I mean, Rose Byrne is back, Patrick Wilson's back, and Patrick Wilson is directing. And
Mhm.
right off the bat, this is a big hit for both of them, but it's a big hit for Patrick Wilson because it's a situation similar to what we saw just a few months ago, where Michael B. Jordan came back to star in Creed 3, but part of the deal was he would direct and he would make his
Mhm.
directorial debut, and he came out of the gate with a huge hit, a huge opening weekend. And Patrick Wilson, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is his directorial debut. I'm sure he's made short films and, home videos with his kids and things like that. But as far as I know, this is his studio debut. And right out of the gate, he directs a movie that opens at $32 million. And obviously, it's his, like what Michael B. Jordan, it's a franchise he stars in, it's a sequel. But I mean, what a smart move. This sets him up to be a guy who could direct studio movies.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. This is great. This is great for him. I think you wanted to mention something about people saying he still looks good.
So here is something that I think we have to note in relation to one of the movies that's not doing as well at the box office right now, but something that it's in the deadline right through, and something a quote that they get from a fan of this movie, someone who went to watch this movie, is that the lead guy still looks the same, meaning
Mhm.
Patrick Wilson. We're in the fifth movie of a franchise that started 12 years ago, and Patrick Wilson, which he does, still looks the same. Now, obviously, 12 years isn't the same as 40 years, which is the difference between the first Indiana Jones movie and this Indiana Jones movie. But if you look at Indy, I mean, a big part of why that movie did not hit expectations is just the natural fact that Harrison Ford is 80 and he does not look the same as he did in the first movie. But Patrick Wilson, this guy looks like he hasn't aged a day. They did not have to, as far as I know, de-age him at all, which
Mhm.
saves Blumhouse a lot of money. I don't think they would de-age because it doesn't fit to their budget. But they had a guy who looks the same as he always did, and Rose Byrne, God bless her, looks the same as she always did. And that's what audiences like that. Obviously, people age, and it's not, but for a star-driven movie like this, it's a big bonus that you don't have to spend, $80 million de-aging them.
Yes. Insidious, The Red Door, if it would have came out 20 years from now, then it's a different conversation, right?
Maybe. I mean,
But
Patrick Wilson, who knows? Rose Byrne, who knows? They're on a great trajectory.
mhm. I mean, he looks the same as he did in that Famous Girls episode, and that came out
Yes.
around the same time. I mean, like, what that was like
Yes.
10 years ago now at this point. So, I
Yes.
mean, the man doesn't age. Let's talk a little bit about who saw this movie. Female heavy, 52% female. It did get a little older, 51% were under 25 versus 68% for the previous chapter.
Okay. So the
Um,
audience is aging a little with them as the actors age.
but nonetheless, 18 to 34, 67%,
Wow.
and diverse crowd, 41% Hispanic and Latino, 26% Caucasian, 16% Black, and 12% Asian. So here's the thing, 12% Asian is a large percentage, and
Mhm.
that is a percentage that would have been going to see Joyride if the marketing team over there doing the Joyride commercials could have done a better job or made a
Mhm.
better movie. Who knows? I
Right.
haven't seen the movie and I will not see the movie. But that's a big I mean, that's kind of backs my theory that the people who would have gone to see Joyride went to see Insidious.
Yeah. So, you mentioned the marketing team, and I think we got to give it up for this Insidious marketing team with some of the stunts that they came up with, which is becoming more and more a part of what you have to do to promote these horror movies. Like I
Mhm.
think the this the greatest one is still the Smile marketing promotion where they had the smiling people get tickets behind home plate at baseball games and sit there and smile, and it went viral on social media. That's still the greatest one yet. But this Insidious Red Door did do these promotions in 6 different cities where they would have red doors set up on the street, and then people would knock on the door, they'd go in the door, and they would get scared by something. People would grab
Mhm.
them, people would jump out and say boo, whatever would happen, and they would film that, and they all went viral on TikTok, Instagram, so on and so forth, Facebook, and the like. And that is a type of thing that gets a young audience to be aware of a movie. And you didn't see that from the Joyride team. They're trying to reach a young, diverse background. And I did not see any cars parked in major cities. And that's also the difference with comedy and horrors. At that point, what do you do with the Joyride installation? Someone goes in a car and you vomit on them, and you make them laugh. It's just
Yeah.
it's much harder. You have a, a, a local stand-up comedian sit in the car and tell them jokes. If anything, that's just going to make people hate the movie.
Well,
If they're if you
that's more of a horror show than a demon jumping out of a red
Mhm.
door for me.
Yeah.
If you had an open micer
Right.
trying to make me laugh while I'm
Right.
stuck in a car, that's a nightmare. I mean, listen, that's a Blumhouse movie.
Yes. Yes.
A
Yes.
guy
Yeah.
who gets picked up by hitchhiker he's hitchhiking, he or she,
Right.
or they,
Or they. Yep.
are picked up hitchhiking, and in the car is all open micers.
Yes. Yes. That's a horror show. And that's
Yeah.
something that you could put an entire viral marketing campaign around, but you
Mhm.
can't really do that with Joyride the comedy. And in Insidious the Red Door, you get these videos of people opening a door, getting scared, they're screaming, they're crying, and that makes you want to see that film. So again, these viral marketing campaigns for horror films. Remember, we had Megan, where they would set the robot Megans loose, and they'd have the 6 different Megans walking the streets, and
Mhm.
that was a mix of comedy and horror, but that worked. And of course, the Scream films, they'll send Ghostface to just walk around neighborhoods, and you just get a struggling actor into a Ghostface costume, you set him loose. If people get scared by him, great. If people beat the hell out of him, great. Doesn't matter, he signed a waiver. But you can't do that with something like Joyride. You can't just set up a car in the middle of a town square and then people get in and you make them laugh and you vomit on them. It just doesn't work.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you had a theory though. Do you think that these Insidious Red Door public installations were on the up and up?
I mean, I watched a few of these, and listen, I don't wanna be the wizard behind the curtain or whatever,
Mhm.
but I've been involved in promotions before on a
Okay.
freelance basis where you have a few people to pepper in so that people know how to react, right?
Mm.
You'll have a few people that are hired actors that get pulled in and that scares someone else. And
Mhm.
then other people see what's going on and they get scared. So you have to set a precedent of like, you will be scared, but you will not be killed.
Got it.
And that's the job of the actor.
Got it. Got it. Is that something you've ever had to say to a person in one of these situations or in another real life situation? Have you ever said to someone else, "You will be scared, but you will not be killed"?
I have said that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Great. Great.
I
So
mean, I'm not
have
gonna
you
get into what situation it was, but it's been several times.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Legally,
pattern, I guess you could
we
say.
can't
It's a
ask any
pattern.
follow-ups. Yeah.
No, no.
Um And you were not part of you've moved past that point in your life, I assume.
Mhm.
You were not part of any Insidious Red Door,
I'm
live
too
promotions.
cleaned up, I'm too recognizable. Obviously, you were recognized in Paris. I mean, imagine
Right.
I pretend that I'm a victim of a Red Door promotion. They're
Right.
gonna be like, "There's a shill."
Yeah.
They're gonna call me a shill. They're all gonna point and scream shill at me because they know I'm
Yes.
a BO boy.
Yes. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
can't get
you
involved in that sort of thing anymore. I can't promote a movie in that way. I
right.
can't be paid to promote in any avenue other than, through the BO boys.
Right, right, right. So that part of your life has to be over
Mhm.
because you're too big of a celebrity to be able to be in a live marketing installation.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, anything else on this Insidious Red Door, 32 million overperforming? I mean, once again, Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, I think huge win for them. Someone like Rose Byrne, who's I think one of our personal favorite actresses, seems to get a little bit stuck in the streaming avenue. I feel like she's always in some kind of Apple or Amazon streaming show, which is great. It's great work, keeps you busy, gets you paid, pays for the apartments and the houses and the cars and all that. But
Mhm.
movies are where it's at. We want to see Rose Byrne on the big screen like she was in Bridesmaids and the Neighbors films. And it's great that in between her streaming series, she has a movie that opens at $32 million. It gives her
Yeah.
that credibility to, maybe get a drama built around her on a small scale to be the headliner of other horror films is probably more likely, but it lets the executives know she's still an opener in these genres.
And I'll say Sony is a big winner here
Mhm.
because, they have the big Spider-Man cartoon, which is now the biggest earner of the summer so far,
Mhm.
and they teamed with Blumhouse to promote this film. I mean, I still give Blumhouse most of the credit here, but some of the Sony movies Blumhouse has worked with before, Fantasy Island was a bomb. The Craft reboot, the less we talk about that, the better.
Yeah.
But that was released to home video because they knew it was a stinker.
Yeah,
And
it is a
Fantasy
stinker.
Island opened before the pandemic, and that one was kind of DOA. That was a head scratcher, the how that got released in theaters, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of the rare misfires
Yeah.
from Blumhouse. But the Sony Blumhouse, marriage looks to be fruitful at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, and again, it's shows another smart strategy by Blumhouse where they'll work with several studios and several distributors, because I think Universal is their home base. That's their Black Phone, that's their Megan, that's where they did Get Out. That's
Mhm.
probably the most known partnership of Blumhouse, but they'll make a movie for Sony. They'll make Streamo movies for Amazon, for Hulu. They work in different places at different levels, but they know when they've got gold on their hands. And they had it here with Insidious the Red Door. They nailed it.
And they coulda released this in August, which is when a lot of horror movies get released in the summer, but they
Hmm.
decided, "Let's thread this needle. Let's bank on the fact that we think that this Dial of Destiny is DOA,
Hmm.
and let's thread this in here before Mission Impossible comes and gobbles up all the audience." And the thing with this movie is that, yeah, it's gonna have a big drop next weekend, but it's already profitable.
Right, right. For sure. And just quickly before we leave this film, I just want to shout out an email we got from a new wannabe boy Walker, who came to us as he's a Minifan. And then through the Kirk
Yes.
Minahan episode, he has now become a wannabe boy. And he did ask about um the seasonal releases for horror films, and how do we think that horror films do in the summer months. You showed us a little chart of when most horror films are released, and it still is obviously a huge spike in October. You get that
Mhm.
spike in January, February, because it's sort of a slower season, so you put out horror films to go against the smaller studio releases. But I mean, summer has been a good month, a good time of year for horror films as well. I mean, you look back and you've got your Sixth Sense, and you've got Blair Witch, and
Mhm.
Conjuring movies, I'm pretty sure came out in the summertime. And just last year, you had Black Phone, you had the Candyman remake, sequel, requel, whatever that was, that came out August of 21 and opened to $23 million in a still down period for box office. So I think horror to me is just a year round. Obviously, October is the sweet spot. If you got a great one and you could get it out in October, you could get an extra bump there for spooky
Mhm.
season. But you could put out a good horror movie in June or July and it's still going to get an audience. It really
That's the
doesn't matter
thing.
anymore.
There's an insatiable audience for horror, and, we woulda had Brent on one of these episodes if
Yeah.
we weren't, recording at 5 AM in the morning over here on the East Coast, but it's so true. People sleep on horror. Horror is the most consistent earner at the box office. Now, is it making Spider-Man cartoon money? No. But
No,
the budget is not Spider-Man cartoon budget. It's
no,
not Elemental budget,
no.
right? These
It's
movies are
not
being
Indiana
made.
Jones $300 million budget.
Yeah. So if you're making a good product at a low price that brings in the youths,
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
you're doing something right. And that's what horror does.
Yep. Yep. So we will keep track of Insidious the Red Door, but I think, like you said, even if it has the expected big drops, $32 million opening weekend guarantees it is a success. So let's move on to the battle between the Sound of Freedom and the creaky sounds of Indiana Jones's joints, because that was a battle
Well,
that we outlined and it happened this weekend. And I mean, Sound of Freedom, it didn't beat Indiana Jones in the 3-day, but I think once again, we have to point out what a wild box office story this Sound of Freedom is. So, I
mhm.
mean, let's get your first thoughts, Clayton, on Sound of Freedom and Indiana Jones and how close that was this weekend. 26 mil for Indiana Jones and 18 mil for Sound of Freedom, though others are saying it was closer to 20 mil. There's disputes out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, uh, even though Sound of Freedom has a literal ticket counter that you can go to the website
Hmm.
and look at, these numbers are gonna be disputed all over the place because
Yeah.
the way it's being released where it opened July 4th. It had some previews on that Monday beforehand,
Mhm.
and we're just now getting a total gross from that point to now, which is
Mhm.
$40 million.
Wow. Wow.
This movie, okay, the fact that we're even talking about it in the same breath as something like Indiana Jones, shows Indiana Jones is a complete stinker. I mean, this thing is a tank job on a massive level, and it's irrelevant to even talk about at this point, I think,
Wow. You
because this
think
is a film
wow.
that's in 4,600 theaters and dropped 56% and made $26 million. And we're talking about Sound of Freedom, which is in 2,952 theaters and made 18.2. Sound of Freedom is the movie that the older folks, the
Okay.
Indiana Jones bread and butter, right? They were hoping young kids would see Indiana Jones, but we said this, it's a dinosaur. It doesn't
Yeah.
have the generational appeal of other such films, like even, Top Gun. Like,
Right.
Indiana Jones, at this point, I think if you made a Goonies sequel, it would outgross an Indiana Jones film, because
That
Goonies
that's
has
a
lasted and Indiana Jones hasn't.
yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I've always said it. I think Goonies versus Gremlins, that's a surefire hit. Someone needs to get on that. And that could have done better than Indiana Jones. I mean, not to I mean, again, I think the thing with Indiana Jones is just the budget. Obviously, it's underperforming. The
Stop it
last
with
movie
just the
opened to
budget.
100 million. There
It's at
there is
121 in 2 weekends, and it's gonna die. Dude, Mission Impossible is going to eat this movie's lunch. This movie is
yes.
gonna make, like, 10 million next week.
Yes, it's true. There's just listen, and I've heard
Are
this
you
from other
sticking up for
people.
indie? This is
Uh,
Anthony D is for Disney, is that who I'm talking to?
no, you're talking to B.O. Boy Pat, who's getting
Okay,
recognized all over Europe. And I'm just speaking truths here. This is a movie that shouldn't have been made, and a lot of people have been saying that. I'll
thank
give
you.
credit to former future guest Eric Weber. He's been saying this on and on his platforms that the problem was always this movie could not have made as much based on the interest level in it as what it had to be budgeted for, because obviously
Mhm.
you're paying Harrison Ford a crazy amount of money to come out there, and you're spending all this money on de-aging, and Lucas and Spielberg have to get 50 million apiece just to sit at home and eat nachos. And the budget on this could never have been low enough to justify what it had to make. And if there was a version of an Indiana Jones movie that could have been budgeted for under 100 million, then this gross is fine. But it because it's
Or
gonna
any of
make
the movies.
150 million.
Well,
It's gonna
how
and
much did The Last Crusade, how much was Crystal Skull's budget? Like, you can't, you're coming up with a theoretical thing that's never gonna happen. With the
right,
way budget's inflated, there's no way this movie would ever get made for 100 million. Nobody gets out of bed for $100 million budgeted indie movie. All
right,
these hot shots, all these big honchos, like Spielberg. Like, if someone says, "Well, we're making $100 million Indiana Jones movie," Lucas and Spielberg would be like, "What is it? A home movie? What are you doing? There's no way we're
right,
putting
right,
our names on that."
right. I mean, Spielberg basically that's what it costs him to make The Post. So never mind
Yes.
Indiana Jones. No, I agree. It is tough to imagine what this movie's expectations ever were, because it was starring an 80-year-old actor in a character whose popularity probably peaked in 1989. And the 2008 movie was a sort of once in a lifetime, just, oh, this is an event, we're seeing him again for the last time. So all to say, yes, this is tanking, but the more and more you think about it, what did they ever think this movie could have done in
Well, here's the thing, Pat.
2023?
Here's the thing, is that Maverick did a lot of great for movies.
Yes.
Maverick, for especially movie theaters, it
Save the box office.
saved the box
Mhm.
office, but it also gave people brain worms
Mm.
where they're thinking, well, if that thing made so much money, well, what about Indiana Jones? And I know
Mhm.
these movies were all, Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny was being made at the same time, or actually maybe it was being made after because Maverick was ready to go in what 2019, 2020. But the thing is that it skews people's understanding of what
Mhm.
we want in legacy characters, right? I mean, look at Batman 1989. We
Right.
thought that movie was gonna be huge because of that, and people said, "Nah, Nolan's our Batman, we're good."
Right, right. With a
And
Flash,
so
a forgotten
that's
film at this point.
exactly. I know, it was funny that thank you for reminding people. And again, Dial of Destiny is gonna be a forgotten movie because this summer is going to be about the Spider-Man
Mhm.
cartoon. It's gonna
Mhm.
be about Barbie. It's gonna be
Yep.
about Mission Impossible, and people will forget about The Flash, and people will forget about this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let us not talk about this failure. Let's talk about a success. Let's talk
Okay,
about a
Sound of Freedom.
successful marketing campaign, right?
Mhm.
That it's so funny. Listen, I'm not gonna. You can step aside. I'm not gonna step in it, but I want you to be very clear of all this. So
Okay.
step aside while I possibly step in it.
Okay, I'm going out into a French field right now to just
Do it.
walk about with my fellow countrymen. Yes.
This movie is never going to be reported on in a positive way in most places because everything's so highly politicized, right? So, the brass tacks of this movie for us, because we don't have any sort of political investment in this movie, huh?
Huh.
We're looking at this movie as pure money for theaters, pure butts in seats. And what you can say for Angel Studios is that they put butts in seats. In a
Yes.
time when you've got Joyride that can't put butts in seats, Indiana Jones can't put butts in seats. Now, is that this again, is it at Spidey cartoon level? No, but this movie's budget is not Spidey cartoon level. This thing made $40 million. That is a lot of bank for this sort of movie with this sort of budget. This is a triumph of marketing. And is it a scam? Of course it's a scam. Do we applaud this scam? We applaud all scams that work,
Yeah.
right? And so the thing is that we're coming at this purely as this is a movie that's making money. And you could take from it what you want, but what we see is a big money earner and a really great marketing plan that we've said in previous episodes people should copy. People should rip
Yeah.
this off. This is not Angel Studios to keep. This can be done with any sort of movie. You just gotta apply something to the tickets and let
Right.
people buy them forward and anonymously give well, I guess it's not anonymous. I don't know how it works, but you're not giving it to your buddy, you're giving it to somebody you don't know, right?
Mhm.
This could work
Mhm.
for many a movie, and it should be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not a proprietary invention that Angel Studios has here on the pay it forward ticket buying, on having the ticket counter in the lower corner of your website. Like we've said before, that used to be standard practice for all websites back in the day, show how many
Mhm.
visitors came to a website. So Angel Studios is gamifying that in the year 2023, which is a great idea, but again, is not proprietary. So Universal Studios and Warner Brothers and Disney, they could all start doing this in the next year, start getting people to feel like their ticket buying is serving some kind of purpose or is
Mhm.
commemorating some kind of child or whatever you want to apply to whatever your movie is. You could learn from this Angel Studio scam, which again in the world of the BO boys, scams are positive because scams
Mhm.
get butts in seats, scams sell
Yeah.
popcorn. Here's one thing I do hope with this film. So Sound
Okay.
of Freedom is getting a lot of theater goers, and people are saying this, they're saying that there's someone who doesn't regularly go to the movies, but they're going to see Sound of Freedom in a movie theater. They're going to AMC's, they're going to
Mhm.
Regals. The highest grossing theater for Sound of Freedom in the last week was a Regal in Tennessee. So they're going to big chain theaters, many of which for the first time in a long time, maybe the first time since Maverick, or the
Yeah.
first time since, whatever rare movie that gets them out. I just hope that they are buying popcorn, that they're buying soda, that they're buying candy, that
Yes.
they're not. And I'm not saying this to denigrate the character of any particular kind of moviegoer, but these are, again, moviegoers who don't go that frequently. I hope they're not sneaking candy in, they're not sneaking baked goods in from the outside, that they are
Mhm.
supporting these theaters, because the Sound of Freedom found money, is great for theaters if the audience buys concessions, because the
True.
theaters do not make the bulk of their money off of the tickets, especially in the opening weekend when the higher percentage goes to the studios. The theaters make their money off of concessions. So if you are a Sound of Freedom theater goer who's listening to this, you're probably a frequent theater goer because you're listening to the BO boys. But
Mhm.
if you are want to be a boy, want to be a girl, want to be a person
Person.
who knows someone who is going to Sound of Freedom, because if they went already, it doesn't matter. But if they're going this week and they're not a frequent theater goer, please tell that Sound of Freedom theater goer to buy popcorn, to buy a large soda, to not sneak concessions into the theater. That's not how it's done. That will not help the theaters. So please, please let your Sound of Freedom going friend know they have to buy concessions on site at the theater.
And that's why, I mean, we've advocated for this, and it will someday, when our reach is vast, this will come
Hmm.
true. Concessions need to be counted and they need to be part of the box office. They don't
Right.
need to be added into the box office totals or anything, but there should be a column that
Hmm.
shows how much these people who went and saw these specific movies paid for concessions, right?
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, Insidious, that probably had higher concessions than Dial of Destiny.
Hmm.
I would almost
Yes.
guarantee it, because the
Yes.
people who go see Insidious, they're horror fans, they load up. They say, "I'm
Hmm.
making this an experience. I
Yeah.
wanna be spitting out my popcorn. I wanna
Yes.
choke on a red vine. You
Yes.
don't g I wanna spill my soda."
Yes.
This is a fan base that knows that that is part of the theater going experience, is throwing your soda on the person next to you when you see someone jump out of the red door.
Hmm.
I think these Dial of Destiny people, we've said this before, they got dentures, the popcorn's gonna get stuck in them. They don't want that, mishigosh. They already ate dinner, 4 PM. That's
Right.
not a movie that's making a lot of money in concessions.
No,
Spider
those Indiana
Spider-Man
Jones audience.
cartoon,
Hmm.
that's making concession money.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
Sound of Freedom, that's a great question. Because Angel Studios, these religious movies that are making this sort of money are new. Like Jesus Revolution, I'd love to see the breakdown of popcorn and sody and jujubes. I'd love to see that, because
Right.
you're right. It's great to have new people come in. It's great to have people who don't normally go, but you gotta play the game. If they're
Right.
just coming in, covered in dust, sit down, maybe get a sip of water from the water fountain, maybe,
Maybe
and then
that's not.
don't pay and leave, don't pay for popcorn, then listen, all theater goers are great, but they're not the best theater goers.
Right. And that's the type of thing that plays into a theater's decision to book films, because
Mhm.
Jesus Revolution. And again, we don't know. We're not saying that we know that the theater goers for Jesus Revolution didn't buy popcorn, but
Mhm.
that movie overperformed at the box office. But if those theater goers did not buy popcorn, did not buy Mike and Ike's, even though that movie was a success, Jesus Revolution 2 will have a harder time getting booked in the theaters because listen, the theater managers are going to say that audience is a bunch of freeloaders. And so that is how you get the things that you like to continue getting made, to continue getting distributed, is you have to show that it's worth it financially for these theaters.
Mhm.
So, the same way that these Sound of Freedom theater goers bought a ticket because it represented a kidnapped child. Think of that when you go and buy a box of Mike and Ike's. You go to see Sound of Freedom and you buy a box of Mike and Ike's, there's probably 200 Mike and Ike's in a box. And think of that.
Oh,
These are
that's being
200.
nice.
You think there's less.
Less.
So let's say 115 Mike and Ike's in a box of Mike and Ike's. Let's just say
Alright.
that, just for the
Okay.
sake of continuing. 115 Mike and Ike's in a box of Mike and Ike's. That's 115 kidnapped children that you're representing. I think that's how the next step is for the theaters to continue Angel Studios marketing. A bucket of popcorn has hundreds, maybe 1,000 individual kernels of popcorn. That whole bucket represents 1,000 kidnapped children. That's what the
Well,
theaters have to market now.
to say, I mean, to jump off that a little bit is that, the negative way of looking at these people who come in, wipe the dust off their pants, maybe get a drink of water, watch the movie, and then solemnly leave, is that they're freeloaders. But
Right.
the other way for a theater to react, which I hope for, and listen, theaters are really slow to react to any sort of change, but you make things that cater to them. You
Mm-hmm.
figure out what sort of thing would they want to eat? What sort of gimmick can you have? And you were mentioning that, but like, you know how these smaller theaters have these themed cocktails? Have themed snacks for the religious folks, for the
Mm,
church bus crowd. You've got to
right.
think ahead. You got to think Angel Studios could, if they play their cards right, they could be the Blumhouse of religious films. They could be the
Mm,
stamp of quality. They could be that sort of thing. But the theaters have to play along and the theaters
yes.
have to welcome. And part of that is we've got theme snacks for you as well.
Mhm.
It's not just going
Mhm.
to be pink Barbie buckets or, a Barbie dream house that you can put your nachos in, right? That's great. And that's awesome. But those people don't want a Barbie dream house. They want something different. And so you have to figure out what that is.
Right, right, right. Pass out Eucharist or something, because in the end, Eucharist is just a wafer. So you put
Yeah.
some chocolate on there and you got a theater concession.
I mean,
And
I'm gonna
and
step aside for this conversation. You can go ahead and step in that, but I know
well,
what you're going for there.
I don't feel like we're stepping in anything. We're just
I'm not because I
brainstorming.
stepped away. You whatever you're stepping in is what you're stepping in. I'm off to the side over here. Hello, hi,
Anyway,
everybody.
these theaters could come up with concessions that make
Yes.
these new theater goers feel at home, that want to make them pull their dust covered wallets out of their dust covered pants. Because there is something to these new Sound of Freedom theater goers. They walk into a theater and they look around an AMC and they're on a mission. They're there to see Sound of Freedom,
Yep.
but the setting itself maybe irks them or scares them, and they look at the concession stand and is this a den of inequity or whatever it is they're
Mhm.
thinking. And so the concession stand has to, if and has to, not morally, has to, if they want to make an extra buck, they have to get that theater goer to feel like, oh, this is okay. I could go over there, pull out my wrinkled $5 bill and spend it here.
They should have pancakes. They should have a
Okay.
raffle, right? These are things that they should have. Just why can't you have a raffle at a movie theater?
Mhm.
Give them a
Mhm.
raffle ticket. This is
Yeah.
great. They'll be like, "Oh, a raffle? I get that. I know what a
Yes.
raffle is. This is awesome." I'm gonna
Yes.
walk out and maybe they're gonna call my number, and who knows what I'll win.
Right. Have a barbecue pit set up in the concessions. You're making hot dogs anyway. You could even make the hot dogs the way you always do on that little box roller thing, but just at the end throw them on a non-working barbecue grill and let the Sound of Freedom theater goers buy it off of that. Make it feel like they're at an outdoor barbecue.
Mhm.
Whatever it takes. You're selling the same hot dogs, but these are church backyard hot dogs instead of rolling box hot dogs. And
The
you could
thing
probably put an upcharge on it. You could sell that $14 hot dog if you're making them think they're buying it from a church barbecue.
Of course. So, I mean, the thing about movie theaters is for us, they are temples or sacred places, right?
Yes.
And they should be open and welcoming to everybody.
Yes.
And so part of that is making the place feel hospitable for everyone. And they
Yes.
could do it. They could do it. It's on
Eh,
them.
yeah.
They should
Eh,
do it. And it's gonna behoove them moving into the future to have it be hospitable for everyone.
and hospitable because it will lead to profits. Because for us, when we look at movie theaters as a sacred place, as a sacred temple, we mean because there are tables out there doing commerce. That's how we look at our sacred temple.
We're BO boys.
Yeah,
Of
of course.
course.
So
It goes without
Sound
saying.
of Sound of Freedom has made 40 million. I mean, we're way over time, but I got to throw out there, how high could this go?
Who knows?
Has this first 40 million been the audience that was determined to see it, that was seeing it with a purpose, and then that's pretty much it? Or do you think that that audience still has more box office to go, and will this cross over? Will this turn into a movie, or has it already, where just people are going because they hear it's an action movie? Because at the heart, that is, I haven't seen this. I probably won't see it until it's on cable and I'll check it out.
Yeah.
But
It's not
it is
playing
an
in
action.
France for sure.
It's not playing in France. No. It would be called, The Sound of Ugly American Freedom. And,
Yeah.
I wonder if this is going to just cross over as a summer action movie in any way.
Um, I okay, to answer your first question, this movie is supposed to run till August 1st. And you can
Okay.
still buy tickets for that. I think the thing is they gotta keep this promotion going. They gotta keep people invested. They gotta, you know, show people that you saw it once, you gotta see it again. I mean, that's the thing is you gotta keep this thing going. I don't think there's a limit to I mean, it's already at 40. It could make like dude, I mean, just in like buying forward, you could buy forward and those tickets could never be cashed in, and that's still tickets.
Right.
So, that's the thing about this, is that you could just invest if you wanted to, if you were somebody who was invested in this movie as somebody who's invested in, what it represents to you, you could be like, "Hey, I got some savings. I'm just gonna pay it forward to these tickets." And those tickets never have to be cashed in. They pay for like they are counted as money towards this movie. So this movie could make $100 million.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
here
it could.
that's the thing. If just a regular studio movie had made $40 million after 6 days in the theaters, we would be looking at it and doing our multipliers and say it is going to make 100 million domestic.
Yeah.
$40 million after 6 days would usually pan out to be $100 million. And obviously with this
Mhm.
movie, we can't do that exact math because we don't know if general audiences are going to see this or it's just the audience that wanted to see it as part of a, I don't know, that were motivated especially to see it. So we don't
Mhm.
know, but there is the chance that this makes 100 million domestic. And I do think part of that is going to have to be just people going to see it because it's an action movie. And will that
That's
happen?
where I am curious. I don't know if that's gonna happen. I don't see this as like a movie that you would look at as, I mean, what's an action like Plane? I just don't know if people are gonna see this movie that would see like a Jerry Butler movie
Well, this has
just
already
because.
grossed way more than Plane
but
or the
but but
typical Jerry Butler movie does
it
domestically.
because of its strong grassroots. What I'm saying is that the Plane audience,
Mhm.
those people, will they see this movie just because it's a quote unquote action movie, which I don't even know if it's actiony at all. And it's a cop drama, I know that, but I don't know
Right.
what level of action is involved here. So is this going to go mainstream, as you say? That I'm dubious about.
Well, I mean, I
I mean,
think
of all the movies that I should see, I know Insidious is a big hit. I think I need to see Sound of Freedom.
I
I
agree.
do, I just think for this show, I know we've talked about should I see Mario, blah, 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 blah. This is such a big question mark that I think I need to see Sound of Freedom.
I think you do too. I agree. That's the
I know Adam
one.
from the Stack saw it, but, like, and we love Adam from the Stacks, OG wanna be oh boy, he's been on this story,
Mhm.
he's the one who tipped us off on all this,
Yep.
but I think I need to see this movie, truly, just because I need to see if it's something that will cross over to the mainstream audience.
Yes, because action movies used to be a staple of all year round, but especially the summer. And nowadays, obviously, it's big special effects movies and superhero movies, and you don't get your bread and butter sliced alone, Bruce Willis, Van Damme, just action movies, Nick Cage, Con Air. That's a genre that you don't
But
get in
Pat,
a
I
big
think this
way.
is a
And
cop drama. I don't know if it's an action movie. I don't know where
w-
you're getting that it's an action movie
Well,
because
there will
this.
be gunplay, there will be shooting, there will be what I'm saying is even cop dramas, you're not getting that type of movie. It's been one of the things that's been taken over by superhero movies, special effects movies.
Mhm.
So, is there an opening for whether it's a cop drama or an action movie for that type of movie to just get some dads and some, just action fans. We'll see. And again, that's why I think, yes, you have to see this film and report back how mainstream can it go? Is there a world in which Angel Studios does change up the marketing a little bit now that they know that there's an audience for this to try and pitch it to a wider
Well,
non-religious audience?
here's the thing. You can't anger your base. Like, the thing is that you've gotta dance with who brung ya. So if they really try and push this as, this is a completely secular movie, that may turn off the people who are driving this film. So it
Yeah,
is a balance.
it's a tricky game, but it all depends. Is the footage there? Is there footage there to cut a 30-second commercial that just makes this seem like an action adventure, summertime movie? I don't know. We haven't seen this, but there's if they want to get to 100, 150, some crazy number like that, then they probably do have to pitch it that way. I think another promotion they could consider as we get a couple of weeks into this is, you know, 2-for-1 deals and cheap movies as a movie's been out for a while. That's a tried and true promotion. And maybe they tweak the marketing so that every time you buy a ticket, you're actually representing 2 kidnapped children. It's like now it's the
Well, you would
summer
have to
promotion.
do, yeah, 2 for
You do a
1.
promotion, you do a 2-for-1. So when the
Yeah,
movie obviously, when it opened, 1 ticket equaled 1 child, but maybe as we get to the final weeks, as we get to
1 ticket
August,
equals 2 childs.
yeah, 1 ticket equals 2 childs, and you run that promotion, and that gets probably a lot of people to see it again.
Because my ticket's going further.
Yes. Yes, your ticket now in August, in the movie's final weeks, your ticket represents two children.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's the type of thing they have to do if they want this movie to hit 100, 120 at the domestic box office, which is now is possible. So we'll be following the
Definitely
story.
one of the stories of the summer for sure.
Yeah. So Clayton, we're going to have another episode later this week. It'll be my final episode on this European tour. So look forward to that. We're going to be
Why don't you call
previewing.
it European Vacation? It's a movie. You
Well,
should
I
just call it
I
your European Vacation.
I want to make sure that the IP is proprietary to the show. So for
Okay.
the purpose of our show, the IP is Pat's European tour.
Oh,
So
good.
we own
I
that.
got it.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
So Mission Impossible opens in the middle of this week. So we'll be previewing that very soon. That's going to be huge. And we won't touch on it now, but Barbie Oppenheimer comes out in just a week or so. It's going to be the biggest, maybe the biggest box office story we've ever covered on this show. I know we've covered Avatar, we've covered Maverick, but this Barbie Oppenheimer situation, it's feeling like it's going to be a legendary box office moment. So we will be covering that soon. The tracking is coming out and it is looking wild. So we're going to be talking about that maybe on the next episode, getting into it. But a lot to come in the next few episodes of the BO
Uh,
Boys.
summer is only half over.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, this really is kind of the start of the summer movie season, in the sense that June was such a disaster with your Indiana
Mhm.
Joneses, and somehow Transformers is the biggest movie of June, other than Spidey cartoon.
Yeah.
Spidey cartoon was the biggest, but so many June bombs. And now we've got Mission Impossible, Barbie, Oppenheimer all in a row. This feels like the heart of summer right now.
And it is. I mean, kids are no matter what school you go to, they are out and they
Yes.
are about.
Yeah.
College is out. People
Yes.
are going to see films.
Yes. Yes. So this is it. So Clayton, of course, like we said earlier, listeners should give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. That helps get the podcast out to new listeners who desperately need this information. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. So this is important. If you're a listener of this show and you haven't done that yet, subscribe right now to the BO Boys YouTube channel, because it's very important to get the subscriber count to continue to grow there, and again, reach more listeners and grow the show. So that is important. Even if you're not going to watch us on YouTube, that subscription helps immensely for the cause.
Mhm.
So subscribe on the BO Boys YouTube channel, and then smash that like button, ring that bell. But
Ring that
subscribing
bell.
right now is the most important thing. And we love getting our comments on the YouTube videos. In fact, I think on a future episode, we read emails. We should check out some of the comments that we've been getting on our YouTube videos. Very insightful stuff there. So follow us on YouTube. Follow us now on TikTok and Twitter, but I think TikTok is going to be the future for BO Boys social media. So we are at the BO Boys Pod on TikTok and Twitter, and wannabe intern Christopher is killing it with the vertical video clips. He's gone vertical and people are loving it. Loving the vertical
Mhm.
clips. Thank you, wannabe intern Christopher, doing a great job. I'll be seeing him in just a few weeks in San Diego for Comic-Con. We'll be reporting live from Comic-Con together. So that's going to be huge.
Wow,
And
you guys will be there, but Marvel won't be there, DC won't be there. Who else is not gonna be there? But you will be
uh,
there. That's the most
we will
important
be
thing.
there, fill in the void left by these major studios. So the BO Boys will be at Comic-Con. And of course, email us, the BO Boys podcast at gmail.com. We love getting your emails. We'll be reading more of them on the preview episode. And we love your boots on the ground reporting and your tips. Once again, want to be oh boy Anna from the stacks. He's the reason that we were on the Sound of Freedom story before anybody else. There was nobody
Mhm.
covering this movie as early as the BO Boys, thanks to our listeners. So send us those emails, the BO Boys podcast at gmail.com. And I think we've done it, Clayton. I got to take
We
a
definitely
European siesta.
Is that oh, I don't isn't there another word for that? Isn't that Spanish? Okay. I don't think there's anything left to say, Pat,
No.
except until next time.
Will
We'll
smell
smell you
you
at
at the
the box
box office.
office.
Nailed
Nailed
it.
it.